Christmas at Whitcombe Rectory. Chapter 1. The Return. Whitcombe Rectory sat on a slight rise above the village, as though the house had once believed it ought to look out and keep watch, over the church spire, the low roofs of cottages, the line of winter-bare trees that marked the stream. Even in December, with frost at the eaves and smoke lifting from the chimneys, it did not look grand. It looked steadfast. Anna Whitcombe saw it through the carriage window and felt a pressure behind her ribs that was not quite sorrow and not quite relief. It was the ache of something long held in the chest, a life made elsewhere, a name changed, a marriage endured and ended, and still, beneath it all, the shape of the girl who had once run down this lane with her ribbons flying. The carriage rocked over the frozen ruts. Her gloved hand tightened around the strap of her reticule, not because she feared falling, but because she feared feeling. Home, she thought, then corrected herself with the cautiousness of widowhood. My father's home. 8 years was a long time to be away from any place without it learning to live without you. And yet the rectory waited in that manner of old houses, as if time were only another draught that came under the door. She had dressed with care that morning, black wool, simple collar, no ornament beyond a plain jet brooch. She was 28, and the morning suited her in the way storms suit a coastline, too well, perhaps. It made her seem composed, it made her seem untouchable, it prevented pity, and Anna had learned that pity was another kind of hand that reached without permission. The carriage halted, gravel crunched. The footman descended, and before he could even open the door, Anna's breath caught. The rectory door swung open. Her father stood on the threshold as though he had been there for hours, though it was not his habit to wait in doorways. The Reverend Edmund Whitcombe had once been a man of upright shoulders and tireless stride, a man who could walk to 3 cottages in one morning and return with mud on his boots and joy in his eyes at having carried a comfort to someone else's hearth. Now he looked smaller, not only thinner, smaller, as though the years had pressed him inward. His hair, which had been greying when she last saw him, was white now. His face, still noble in its lines, was marked by fatigue around the eyes. Anna stepped down. The cold struck her cheeks sharply. She forced herself to walk instead of run, because she was a widow now, and widows did not run like girls. He came forward too quickly, forgetting himself. Anna, he said. The sound of her name in his voice, her true name, not Mrs. Palmer, not a courteous title, undid her in a sudden, humiliating way. She lifted her hands and gripped his sleeves, as if he might vanish if she did not anchor him. "You should not hurry," she managed. "I told you in my letter." He pulled her into an embrace that was not tidy, not reserved, not dignified. It was the embrace of a man who had been alone too long. "Forgive me," he murmured. "Forgive me, my dear girl." And then the words, "my dear girl," the phrase he had used when she was small and feverish, when she had cried over a dead bird, when she had confessed some childish untruth, broke her remaining composure. Her eyes stung. She pressed her forehead against his shoulder and allowed herself for a moment to be his daughter rather than someone's widow. "I am here," she whispered. "I am here." He held her with a fierce tenderness, then drew back with the reluctance of a man forced to admit the world existed beyond this moment. "You are thinner," he said, as if his first duty must be to scold her into being well. "So are you," she returned, trying to smile. "Ah," he said softly, "so I am." They went in together. The hall smelled of coal smoke and old wood and beeswax polish. Mrs. Greaves had never permitted neglect. Anna removed her cloak and bonnet, her fingers slower than usual. Her hands were cold, but it was not the cold that made them clumsy. It was the weight of seeing her childhood home after so long, and seeing her father changed. Mrs. Greaves appeared, her cap starched, her mouth pressed into a line that failed immediately. "Mrs. Palmer," she began, then stopped and shook her head as though refusing the years. "No," Miss Anna, you've come home. Anna smiled a little shakily. For Christmas, Mrs. Greaves. For as long as you please, the housekeeper said, as if challenging fate to dispute it. A warmth moved in Anna's chest that was almost painful. They went into the sitting room, where the fire was lit and the curtains were drawn against the early winter dusk. The furniture was the same, the patched armchair by the hearth, the small table with its stack of books, the faded carpet that had once been brighter. Nothing fashionable, nothing showy, yet everything chosen with love and kept with care. Tea arrived. Anna sat opposite her father, studying him in the firelight while he pretended not to know he was being studied. You did not tell me, she said at last. He looked up, the crease between his brows deepening. Tell you what, my dear? How ill you have been. A shadow passed across his expression. Not ill, only tired. You write with more pauses now, she said quietly. Between your lines. I could hear you catching breath even in the ink. He gave a rueful smile. You were always too observant. I had to be, she said, then regretted it. The words made the past press closer, her marriage, the careful endurance of it, the way she had learned to watch rather than speak. Her father's gaze softened. I did not wish to frighten you. And yet you asked me to come. He lowered his eyes to his cup. Yes. There was something unspoken there, heavy as a book left shut too long. Anna waited. At length he said, The living is under review. Anna's hand stilled. Under review? He sighed, the sound of a man who had carried strain alone and grown used to it. Repairs are needed, the roof of the church, the parsonage drains, the vestry windows. The tithe income is modest, and the parish, well, Whitcombe is not wealthy. It never has been, Anna said. No, he agreed. But in years past, the patron would help quietly when needed. The patron, she echoed. I thought we were the patron's responsibility by law and tradition. Her father's lips twitched at the faint spark in her tone. In theory, in practice, patronage is the difference between survival and decline. Who is the patron now? Mr. James Harrowby. Anna frowned. I do not recall the name. You would not, he said. He has been abroad for many years and returned only recently. And now he is coming here? Her father's fingers tightened around the cup. He is visiting for Christmas. Anna tried to keep her voice even. To see if he will fund the living. To assess it, her father corrected gently. He is a careful man. A careful man, Anna thought. That sounded like danger. And he is a stranger to us, she said. Her father hesitated. Not entirely. Anna's gaze sharpened. Father? He looked away, as if toward some memory beyond the window. He knew your mother. The room seemed to contract around that sentence. Anna's mother had been a bright presence in Anna's early life, a laughing voice, hands that smelled faintly of lavender, a warm lap, a gentle singing that had soothed childish fears. Her death had left a quiet absence so complete that Anna had learned not to approach it too directly. One did not prod at a wound that had scarred over. Who was he to her? Anna asked. Her father's voice grew careful. A man she once respected, long ago. Respected, Anna repeated. Yes. It was, Anna understood, as much as he meant to say. She set down her cup, forcing her fingers to steady. Then we must be at our best, she said, if the living is at risk. Her father's shoulders sagged minutely with relief. Yes, he whispered. Yes. Thank you. Anna did not know then how much her return would test every part of her grief, her identity, her very name. She only knew that the rectory needed her, and her father needed her, and perhaps, quietly, she needed them too. That night, after her trunk was carried up and she had stood alone in the bedroom of her girlhood, Anna opened the window curtain and looked out. Snow lay faintly on the hedges, like a promise not yet fulfilled. The village lights glimmered. The church spire rose black against a sky thick with stars. She pressed her palm to the cold glass. "I am here," she whispered again, though no one could hear her. Then she turned from the window and began unpacking, as if order might keep the world from shifting. Chapter 2. The Patron at the Table. Mr. Harrowby arrived the following afternoon, when the day was paling toward early dusk and the first proper snow began to fall. Anna heard the carriage wheels before she saw him. The sound pulled her gaze toward the hall window with a strange urgency. She was in the study, her father's domain, sorting old parish papers into piles, attempting to impose sense upon a chaos made worse by illness and fatigue. Her father had insisted on doing it himself, but she had seen how his hands shook when he thought no one watched. She had quietly taken over. Mrs. Greaves had told her with grim satisfaction that men will insist on martyrdom until a woman takes the pen out of their hands. Now she rose, smoothing her skirts, and moved toward the hall. Her father stood waiting, his shoulders squared too firmly. Anna saw the effort it took him. Pride, she thought. Pride and fear. The front door opened. Cold air rushed in, and then Mr. James Harrowby stepped over the threshold. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in dark wool with the quiet precision of a man who valued function over ornament. His boots were clean, his gloves of fine leather, his hair dark with threads of grey at the temples. There was something restrained about him, not shy, not timid, but controlled, as though he had built his life around the careful management of feeling. He bowed to her father first. "Reverend Whitcombe," he said, voice low. "Thank you for receiving me." Her father's smile was formal. "Mr. Harrowby, you honour this house." Mr. Harrowby's gaze moved then, measured steady, to Anna. "Mrs. Whitcombe," he said. The use of her maiden name startled her. She had been Mrs. Palmer for 8 years, married, then widowed. People still called her by that name in town where her husband had lived. Even in letters, acquaintances wrote Mrs. Palmer, as though clinging to what made sense. Yet here this man, a stranger, named her as if he had known her all along. Anna's chin lifted. "Mr. Harrowby." He bowed again, then paused, a fraction too long, as though something in her face had struck him. There was an expression that flickered across his features, not surprise exactly, but recognition. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by calm courtesy. "You are welcome," she said carefully. "Whitcombe is glad to receive Christmas guests." "Thank you," he replied. "It is unchanged." Her father blinked faintly. "You have been here before?" Mr. Harrowby's gaze did not waver. "Once. Long ago, briefly." Anna felt the strange pressure again behind her ribs. Long ago, briefly, and he had known her mother. The word "new" could cover much, from a polite acquaintance to something that made hearts bleed. They moved into the sitting room. Tea was served. Conversation was careful, polite, almost stiff at first. Mr. Harrowby asked about the parish with the precision of a man examining a ledger. Attendance, charitable needs, repairs required, the state of the school, the health of the older villagers. Yet he also asked about people, not just numbers. "How is Mrs. Pottle?" he inquired. "I recall she was prone to winter chills." Anna's brows lifted. "You recall her?" He sipped his tea. "I remember certain faces." "And the parish," Anna said, remembers that its patron has returned. He inclined his head, neither accepting praise nor deflecting it. Her father, however, looked faintly relieved. We are grateful, he said quietly. Mr. Harrowby's gaze softened, just slightly, when it rested on the rector. Then it moved again, as if he did not permit softness to remain. That evening, Mr. Harrowby joined them for supper with the other guests, Mrs. Larkins, the rector's widowed sister, who spoke in gentle admonitions, Mr. Holloway, the village schoolmaster, nervous in company, and Miss Freya Morton, a distant cousin visiting for the season, whose bright chatter seemed determined to keep the household from sinking into solemnity. Anna sat opposite Mr. Harrowby at the long table. In the candlelight, she studied him. He spoke little, but listened closely, his attention exact. When Miss Morton laughed too loudly, he did not flinch. He merely waited for her to exhaust herself, and then returned to the subject at hand with quiet tact. When Mrs. Larkins made a pointed remark about the rector's declining strength, he interposed gently, asking after her own health instead. It was subtle, it was careful, it was the manners of a man who had learned to move through difficult rooms without leaving bruises behind. After supper, while the others drifted toward the parlour, Anna remained a moment to speak to Mrs. Greaves in the hall. She turned back and found Mr. Harrowby waiting near the window, looking out at the snow. "Are you accustomed to country Christmases?" she asked, more for something to say than out of true curiosity. He turned. "I have spent many Christmases abroad." "In warmer climates?" "In harsher ones," he said, and something in the quietness of that answer suggested memories he did not display. "But Whitcombe has a particular peace." Anna felt her mouth tighten slightly. Peace can be fragile. "Yes," he agreed, eyes steady. "It can." There was a pause. "You call me Mrs. Whitcombe," she said, unable to let it pass. "That is not the name I have borne these years." His expression did not change, but his gaze sharpened as if he had expected the question. "I understood you had returned to your father's household," he said, "and that your husband has been dead 2 years." Anna's throat tightened. "You are well informed." "I make it my business," he replied. "Why?" His eyes held hers. "Because the living matters." Anna did not wholly believe him, though she did not know why. Later that night, when the house grew quiet, Mr. Harrowby sat alone in his guest room with a small bundle of letters in his hands. They were tied with ribbon, worn with age. He had carried them for years as one might carry a relic, proof of devotion, proof of loss. He unwrapped them slowly, fingers careful, as if the paper itself might shatter. On the top letter, the handwriting was unmistakable. Eleanor Whitcombe. He had not seen Anna Whitcombe since she was a small child, all solemn eyes and scraped knees. Yet in her face he had seen something that struck him like a bell. The line of her mother's brow, the shape of her mouth when she held back a smile, the quiet steadiness. And worse than that, he had seen grief. The knowledge that he had had a hand in shaping her life sat heavy in his chest. He stared at the letters until the candle guttered. Then he tied them again, as if he could bind the past by ribbon. Chapter 3. The Truth in Dust. The days before Christmas moved in a rhythm Whitcombe Rectory had always known. Baking, polishing, visiting cottages, preparing the church for service, rehearsing hymns with children whose voices cracked with enthusiasm. Anna threw herself into it with the fierce discipline of a woman who knew how to survive by doing. When grief threatened to creep in, she kneaded dough harder. When loneliness pressed, she scrubbed brass until it shone. When fear for her father's health rose in her throat like a sob, she wrapped him in an extra scarf and spoke cheerfully of nothing at all. Mr. Harrowby watched. He never said, "You are doing too much." He never offered help in the manner of men who wish to feel noble. Instead, he simply appeared where he was needed without announcement, lifting heavy boxes of hymnals, carrying coal scuttles, repairing a loose step at the church porch with competent hands. Once, Anna found him in the rectory kitchen tying a parcel with string, quietly, neatly, while Mrs. Greaves instructed him with the stern satisfaction of a woman enjoying a gentleman's obedience. "You do not seem the type to be ordered about," Anna said, unable to keep some amusement from her tone. Mr. Harrowby looked up. "Mrs. Greaves is formidable." "She is," Anna agreed, and for a moment something light flickered between them. Then it vanished, as it always did, because Anna carried her widowhood like a shield and Mr. Harrowby carried his restraint like armour. It was on the 23rd of December that the truth was found. Anna had been sorting linens for the extra guests arriving on Christmas Eve, a neighbouring clergyman and his wife, and a young curate newly arrived in the county. Mrs. Greaves sent her to the attic to find old sheets stored in a chest that had not been opened in years. The attic smelled of dust and wood and old lavender sachets that had long since surrendered their scent. Anna moved carefully, lifting lids, shifting boxes, making mental notes of what must be thrown away and what could be mended. It was strangely comforting, this order, this practical work. It reminded her of girlhood, when a chore could make the world feel manageable. Then she found the chest. It was tucked beneath a low beam, covered with an old blanket. The latch resisted at first. She pressed harder. It sprang open. Inside were papers, stacked carefully. Letters, journals, folded documents tied with ribbon. Anna's breath caught. Her mother's handwriting lay before her like a ghost. She sank to her knees, the cold forgotten. For years, she had had almost nothing of her mother beyond a miniature portrait and the memory of a voice. Her father had spoken of her mother with tenderness, but also with a certain caution, as though grief might break the household if touched too hard. Anna lifted a letter. The date made her blink, years before her parents' marriage. She read the first lines and felt her heart stumble. "My dearest James." Anna stared at the name as if it might change beneath her gaze. "James, Mr. Harrowby." Her fingers tightened on the paper. She read further, the words leaping into meaning with cruel clarity. Her mother wrote of love, quiet, devoted, aching, of danger too, of gossip, of threats, of a fear that her family would destroy her if she married beneath her father's wishes, or perhaps if she married at all. She wrote of a plan, of sacrifice, of giving up what was dearest in order to survive. And then she wrote of Anna, not as a child born in wedlock, but as a child born before. Anna's breath turned shallow. The attic seemed to tilt around her. She rifled through the papers with trembling hands, desperate for certainty, desperate for contradiction. But the letters, one after another, carried the same truth. Her mother had been privately born into scandal, and Anna had been the scandal made flesh, then hidden by marriage and silence. She pressed a hand to her mouth. A strange sound escaped her, half laugh, half sob. Her entire life she had believed she was Edmund Whitcomb's legitimate daughter, born in due time, cherished, secure. She had been someone. Now she felt as if the floorboards beneath her had been replaced with air. She thought of the whispers that had followed her sometimes in town, faint, never spoken in her hearing, but sensed. She thought of her late husband's mother, who had looked at her once with sharp curiosity and then said, "You have a face that carries secrets." Anna had thought it was only unkindness. Perhaps it had been knowledge. She gathered the letters with shaking hands and forced herself to stand. Her head swam. She clutched the bundle to her chest and stumbled toward the attic stairs, descending as if she were walking down into a different life. She found her father in the study, bent over papers, his hand trembling slightly as he wrote. Mr. Harrowby stood by the window, speaking quietly with him. Anna entered, and both men turned. Her father's expression was startled. Mr. Harrowby's face went still in a manner that made her blood turn cold. "You," she said, her voice thin. "You knew." She did not mean to speak so harshly. She could not seem to soften it. Mr. Harrowby's eyes met hers. Yes. The word struck like a blow. Her father rose, confusion flooding his face. "Anna, what is this?" She held up the letters, her father's face drained of colour. He reached for them, then stopped, his hand hovering, as if touching them would burn. "Oh," he whispered. Anna stared at him, betrayal twisting inside her so sharply she could scarcely breathe. "You knew too." Her father's shoulders sagged, as if he were surrendering to something long avoided. "Yes," he said hoarsely. Anna's vision blurred. "All my life. You let me believe." Her father's voice cracked. "I meant to protect you." "You meant to protect yourself," she hissed, and immediately hated herself for the cruelty because she saw the pain in his eyes. Mr. Harrowby stepped forward slightly. "Do not blame him alone." Anna turned on him, fury giving her steadiness. "Do not tell me what to do, sir. Do not speak as though you have any right." His face tightened, but he did not retreat. "I have more right than you know." Anna's breath hitched. "Then tell me." Silence fell. Her father sank into his chair, as if the strength had gone out of him. Mr. Harrowby's voice was low. "Your mother was my first love." Anna felt as if her heart had stopped. "She loved you," he continued, and the admission cost him. It showed in the way his jaw clenched. "We intended to marry." "And did you?" Anna demanded. "No." "Why?" He looked at her, as though he were choosing whether to open his own chest and let her see what lay inside. "Because she was threatened," he said. "Her family, her father, believed I was beneath her station. They would have forced her into a marriage she did not want or sent her away. There were men who would have ruined her for sport once they sensed weakness. I was young. I had money, but not enough influence then. Not enough to shield her." Anna's hands tightened around the letters until the edges dug into her gloves. "So you abandoned her." His expression flickered with pain. "I surrendered her. There is a difference." Anna's laugh was harsh and brief. "Is there? To the woman left behind?" He flinched as if struck. "No," he admitted quietly. "Not to her." Anna's eyes stung. "And I was born. In secret. And then my mother married my father and pretended." Her father's voice was a whisper. "I loved her." Anna turned to him, tears spilling now, too hot to control. "You let me live a lie." Her father's eyes filled. "I gave you my name, my home, my faith. I have loved you as my own flesh." "As your own," Anna repeated bitterly, "but not truly." Her father's face crumpled. "Anna, please." For a moment she wanted to run, to flee the room, the house, the village, to tear the past out of her skin, but she could not, because her father looked ill, and because her mother's letters lay like a corpse between them, and because Mr. Harrowby's gaze held a grief she could not ignore. "You," she said to Mr. Harrowby, her voice trembling. "You knew all this." "Yes." "And you came here? This Christmas? Why? To judge my father's living? To decide whether we are worth saving?" His eyes did not waver. "I came because the parish needs support. And because—" "And because what?" Anna demanded. His voice dropped. "Because you came home." Anna stared at him, the room spinning. She felt the cruel irony. She had returned to help her father, and instead she had found herself unmoored, her identity torn open, her name uncertain. She clutched the letters, suddenly afraid they might vanish. I must be alone. Anna, her father began. No. Her voice broke. Do not follow me. She fled. In her bedroom, Anna locked the door and slid down against it, the letters spilling across her lap. Her hands shook. Her tears fell. She pressed her forehead to her knees and tried to breathe. She thought of her late husband, Richard Palmer, his polite kindness at first, his growing coldness, his death from a fever that had taken him in 10 days, while she sat helpless, praying. She had believed widowhood was the greatest upheaval she would ever endure. Now she realized there were worse losses than a husband. There was the loss of self. Downstairs, the rectory went on with its quiet rhythm. Mrs. Greaves calling orders, someone stirring the fire, the wind against the windows, while Anna sat alone and held her mother's words like a wound. That night, when Christmas candles were being prepared and the household pretended nothing had happened, Mr. Harrowby stood outside Anna's door and spoke, so softly that only she could hear. I am sorry, he said. I am sorry for every year of silence. Anna did not answer, but she pressed her hand against the door, palm to wood, as if resisting the urge to press it against his hand. Chapter 4. What Christmas Requires. Christmas Eve arrived wrapped in snow and tension. The village looked beautiful. White roofs, smoke curling from chimneys, holly tied to cottage doors. Children dragged sleds down the lane. The church bells rang for rehearsal, their sound crisp and bright in the cold air. Inside Whitcombe Rectory, however, the air was heavy. Anna did not speak of the letters. She moved through the day with a brittle composure that fooled no one but the guests who arrived too late to sense the fracture. Her father watched her with quiet desperation, as though afraid she might vanish. He tried twice to speak privately, and each time Anna said politely, "Not today," with a steadiness that cut him more deeply than anger would have done. Mr. Harrowby kept his distance, though Anna felt his presence like a shadow at the edge of her vision. He did not press her. He did not demand forgiveness. He simply existed, calm, solid, unyielding, like a stone in the river that changed the water's course whether it wished or not. That night, after the guests were settled and the household quieted, Anna went to the church alone. She wrapped herself in her cloak and stepped into the snowy lane, her breath clouding. The church door yielded with a familiar creak. Inside, the air was cold and still. Candles were arranged on the altar for the midnight service. Anna walked slowly down the aisle and stood before the altar, staring at the carved wood. She had prayed here as a child. She had sung hymns here beside her mother. She had stood here at her father's side when parishioners buried their dead. Now she felt as if she were the one being buried, her old self laid in the ground. "You let me believe," she whispered to the empty church. "Why?" No answer came, only the faint echo of her voice. Then she heard a sound behind her, footsteps on stone. She turned. Mr. Harrowby stood in the doorway, his dark coat dusted with snow, his hat in his hand. He looked hesitant, as though he had not intended to intrude, yet he could not stay away. "I thought I might find you here," he said quietly. Anna's throat tightened. "Did you follow me?" "No," he replied. "I hoped. The church is where you go when the house is too full." Anna gave a humourless smile. "You know too much about me, sir." His gaze was steady. Not enough. Anna's hands clenched at her sides. "Why did you not tell me?" His face tightened. "Because it was not mine to tell." "It was mine to know." "Yes," he admitted. "And I failed you." Anna turned away, staring again at the altar. You failed my mother too. A long silence. Then he said softly, "Yes." The word held so much weight. Years, regret, devotion turned into sacrifice that perhaps had not been asked for. Anna's voice trembled. "Did she forgive you?" He did not answer at once. When he did, his voice was rougher than before. "She died before I could ask." Anna closed her eyes, pain twisting through her. "She wrote to you," Anna said, touching the letters in her pocket. "She loved you. She trusted you." "I did not deserve either," he replied. Anna turned back, anger rising again, because anger was easier than grief. "And yet you come here now, to judge my father's living and to decide our fate." His eyes sharpened. "I came to save it." Anna blinked. He stepped forward, slow, careful, as if approaching a frightened creature. "The living will not fail," he said quietly. "The repairs will be funded. The school will have coal. The parish will not be left to rot." Anna's breath caught. "Because you are kind." His mouth tightened. "Because I owe Whitcombe more than kindness." "And because of me," Anna accused. He held her gaze. "Yes." Anna's chest tightened painfully. "You look at me and see my mother." He flinched. "No." Anna's voice broke. "Then what do you see?" His gaze moved over her face, her eyes, her mouth, the tightness at her brow, the grief she carried like armor. "I see a woman who has survived loneliness," he said. "I see a woman who has been asked to endure things she did not choose. I see a heart that still chooses duty when it has every right to choose bitterness. And I—" He stopped, as if the words ahead were dangerous. Anna's lips parted. "And you what?" His voice dropped. "And I find myself wanting impossibly to be worthy of your regard." Anna stared at him, stunned by the raw sincerity in his tone. It did not sound like seduction. It sounded like confession. She felt her heart beat in her throat. "You have no right," she whispered, though she did not know whether she meant it. He nodded, a painful acceptance. "I know. That is why I have kept silence. That is why I have kept distance. But I cannot remain silent forever." Anna's tears rose again, unwanted. "You loved her," she said, "and now you—" "I do not replace her," he interrupted gently, "and you are not her echo. I would never ask you to be." Anna shook her head, helpless. "Then why does it feel like my life has been shaped by your choices before I was even born?" His face tightened. "Because it has." The honesty of that answer struck her harder than any defense could have done. He stepped closer, but not too close, respecting space, as she had noticed he always did. "I cannot undo what has been done," he said, "but I can stop adding to the injury. I can tell you everything. I can stand with the rector and confess my part if you wish it. I can take whatever anger you have. I can accept your refusal, but I will not, cannot, continue to watch you suffer alone." Anna's breath shook. She turned away, pressing her hand to the cold wooden pew. For a long moment, she could not speak. Finally, she said, "You are not my father." His voice was firm. "No. But you were part of my beginning." "Yes," he whispered. "In the same way a storm is part of the sea." Anna's lips trembled. The image was painful, apt. She turned back. "If you had married her—" He closed his eyes briefly. "If I had married her, she would have been ruined by her own family, or trapped in a marriage forced upon her, or—" His voice broke, and Anna saw for the first time how deeply he had been wounded. "Or she would have been taken from me by scandal and cruelty. I believed I chose the only path that kept her safe." "And she married my father," Anna said, voice raw. "Yes." Anna's chest tightened. Did my father know you? Mr. Harrowby hesitated. Yes. Anna's eyes widened. Then my father knew you loved her. Yes. And he still married her. Mr. Harrowby's gaze softened. He married her because she needed shelter, and because he loved her, and because he was willing to bear what others would not. Anna's throat tightened with an unexpected surge of tenderness for her father, tenderness tangled with hurt. I don't know who I am, she whispered. Mr. Harrowby's voice was steady. You are Anna. You are the woman you have become. Your name was never the measure of your worth. Anna laughed softly, brokenly. That is easy to say for a man whose name has always been secure. He flinched, then nodded. Yes, it is. Silence fell again. The candles at the altar flickered faintly in a draught. Then Anna said, in a voice so quiet it frightened her. And if there is affection between us, what then? Is it real, or only the past repeating itself? Mr. Harrowby's jaw clenched. It is real, he said, because it is chosen now, by two living people, not by memory. Anna's breath shook. I do not ask you to love me, he continued, voice low. I ask only that you allow me to be honest with you, and that you allow yourself to be, if not forgiving, then at least unburdened of secrets. Anna stared at him for a long time. Then she whispered, Tell me everything. So he did. In the cold church on Christmas Eve, James Harrowby told Anna the story of her mother, of their love, of the threats, of the fear, of his decision to step back so she could marry the rector and secure her place. He told her how he had returned years later, hoping to see her again, only to find she had died. He told her how he had carried the guilt and the devotion like a chain. He told her how he had learned of Anna's marriage, then her widowhood, and how, when he heard she had returned to Whitcombe, something in him had cracked open. When he finished, Anna's cheeks were wet. She did not remember when she had started crying. She stood very still, as if afraid any movement would shatter what she had heard. Finally, she said, My mother was brave. His eyes glistened. Yes. And my father, she whispered, has loved me all my life. Yes, Mr. Harrowby said, voice rough. He has. Anna closed her eyes. Then perhaps I can bear this. She opened her eyes again, and something in her gaze shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. Come with me, she said suddenly. To where? To my father, she replied. Tonight, before Christmas morning comes, before we hide again. Mr. Harrowby's expression tightened with fear. Anna. No, she said, voice steady now. I will not let another year be shaped by silence. They walked back through the snow together, not touching, but aligned in the same direction. An intimacy more powerful than any clasped hand. At the rectory, Anna went straight to her father's study. She knocked once, then entered. Her father looked up, startled, his eyes tired. Anna stood before him, the letters in her hands again. I know, she said. Her father's face crumpled. Anna. And I am hurt, she continued, voice shaking but firm, and angry, and frightened. But I am also yours. Her father's breath broke. Tears spilled down his cheeks unashamedly. I am sorry, he whispered. God help me, I am sorry. Anna's throat tightened. Did you ever love me less because of it? No, he said fiercely. Never, never. Anna swallowed. Then stop looking at me as if you have lost me. Her father rose unsteadily, and Anna crossed the room and took his hands. You did wrong, she whispered, tears falling again. But you also gave me everything you had. Her father bowed his head over her hands, sobbing softly like a man undone. Mr. Harrowby stood behind her, silent, his face tight with emotion. Anna turned slightly, looking at him over her shoulder. "And you," she said, "you will fund the living. Not because you want to atone, but because Whitcombe deserves it." He nodded. "Yes." "And you will stop hiding?" His voice was hoarse. "Yes." Anna drew a shaky breath. "Then we begin again." Christmas Day dawned pale and bright. Snow lay deep. The village woke to bells and smoke and the scent of baking. At the church service, Anna stood beside her father, her voice steady as she read the lesson. Mr. Harrowby sat in the front pew, his posture straight, his gaze lifted toward the altar. Not as a man judging, but as a man surrendering something stubborn inside himself. Afterward, in the churchyard, parishioners greeted one another with warmth. Anna stepped outside and felt the cold air fill her lungs. Mr. Harrowby approached her carefully, as if unsure he was permitted. Anna looked at him and saw something different now, not merely the keeper of her mother's past, but a man who had chosen sacrifice and then had to live with the consequences. He stopped a respectful distance away. "Mrs. Whitcombe," he said softly. Anna's mouth tightened. "Do not call me that as though it is a mask. It is my name, and it is my father's." He nodded. "Forgive me." She studied him for a long moment. Then she said quietly, "Walk with me." He blinked, as if startled. "Where?" "Anywhere," she replied, "but not alone." They walked along the churchyard path, snow crunching beneath their boots. They did not touch, yet something in the space between them had softened, like ice beginning to melt without losing its shape. "I do not know what I feel," Anna admitted. "I will not ask you to name it," he said. Anna glanced at him. "And what do you feel?" His gaze met hers, steady and honest. "Hope," he said, "and fear, and gratitude, and love, though it is the last word I have any right to use." Anna's throat tightened. "Love is not always earned," she whispered. "Sometimes it is simply given." He swallowed hard. They stopped near the old yew tree by the church gate. Mr. Harrowby turned to her fully. "Anna," he said, voice low, "I will not offer you a life that is merely an apology. If you permit me any place in your regard, it will be because you choose it, freely." Anna's eyes stung. She thought of all the choices made for her, before she was born, in her marriage, in her widowhood. She drew a breath. "Then let me choose," she said. He stared at her, stunned. Anna's voice trembled. "Not everything at once, not a promise I cannot yet keep, but let me choose to know you, without silence. Let me choose to see you, not as the past, but as the present." His breath shook. "Yes." Anna's lips trembled into the faintest smile, fragile as the snowflakes falling around them. "And if," she added quietly, "in time, love grows, then it will be ours, not hers." Mr. Harrowby's eyes shone. He did not reach for her hand. He waited. Anna lifted her hand first, offering it. He took it gently, as if it were sacred. And Whitcombe Rectory, once a house that waited, began at last to become a house that healed. Thank you, dear reader of the Regency Gazette, for joining us in another tale of love, intrigue, and whispered ballroom secrets. If today's romance delighted you, kindly bestow a like upon this video. It helps our Gazette reach more lovers of Regency storytelling. For weekly journeys into dukes, debutantes, scandals, and slow-burning devotion, please subscribe to the Gazette and tap the little bell so you are notified the moment the next story is published. Until our next edition, may your days be filled with grace and your nights with the promise of romance.